don't go to communion. I'm dead serious. When you're up in line in Mass and everybody starts walking up, do not receive communion. Don't do it. Don't do it. If you're in a state of mortal sin, don't do it. Hey all, I'm so sorry about that incredibly clickbaity title, but now you're watching. So, why? Why should you not go to communion? Well, if you're in the state of mortal sin, you should not go to communion. And why, pray tell, should you not receive communion in a state of mortal sin? Well, it's really quite simple. You're not worthy. St. Paul says that he who eats and drinks communion unworthily is eating and drinking their own damnation. Do you want to eat and drink your own damnation? I don't think so. Don't go to communion. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't go to communion at all. I'm just saying when you are in a state of mortal sin, do not go to communion. But Connor, you might be saying, that doesn't really make sense. If you're going to communion, isn't it because you need the graces? And if you're sinning, doesn't that mean you need the graces from God? Well, I mean, even an analogy a priest friend told me one time. Communion is like a fire, and we are like the pots. And when you put a pot into the fire, it becomes harder. But let's say the pot has a big crack down the side. Well, what happens then? Well, if you put the pot into the fire with a crack, the crack is going to get bigger. If we put ourselves in a position where we are in the fire, i.e. receiving communion, then that crack, sin, is just going to become bigger. So what do you have to do? Go to confession. Get that mortal sin forgiven. Nice and easy. Venial sins, as soon as you say the Confiteor in Mass, they're forgiven, you're good to go. But mortal sins, go to confession. Confession was made for that reason, to forgive sins, not communion. Communion is meant to receive grace and receive the life of Christ in you. Confession is made for forgiving the sins. But I have to admit, it is a bit terrifying to go up arms crossed, receiving communion. But really, don't worry about it. No one knows why you aren't going up. It very well could be that you just ate 20 minutes before Mass and, oh, now you can't receive communion. They don't know. You could have done that. Maybe you did that. Plus, let's be real. When you look up and you're seeing somebody who has their arms crossed, even if you know them, you don't really care. Do you? Do you actively think, hey, why aren't they receiving communion? If so, that's another talk altogether. You shouldn't be worrying about that. But regardless, nobody's going to care. You don't care about why others have their hands folded. They're not going to care about why you have your hands folded. They're going to be more focused on praying internally. So that is my spiel for the day. Do not receive communion if you're in the state of mortal sin. Just don't do it. Don't do it. Go to confession. Confession is the bomb. Why would you ever not want to go to confession? Confession is like the greatest sacrament besides the Eucharist, because the Eucharist is source and summit of, you get the picture. Don't receive the source and summit without going to confession. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching, and if you like this, subscribe. Do new episodes every Wednesday at 8 a.m. Eastern Time. Click right up there to watch last week's episode on the Planned Parenthood ad and why it makes completely no sense, and it made me incredibly triggered. And thank you everybody so much for watching. And as it was in the beginning, is now, never shall be, rise up and live.